Hey everyone, my name is Tommy, and like many people around the world, I love Disney and Pixar. So back in April of this year, when Disney released they're going to put Onward onto Disney Plus, I got really excited because I hadn't seen it before but I wanted to. And I really liked it. I thought it was really cool, and I loved how the different people were different creatures. So like you had elves, centaurs, goblins, trolls, you name it, lots of different creatures. But while I was watching it, I was thinking, what would I be in this movie? And then I took it a step further and I realized, wait a minute, I know how to make these CG models. So then I wanted to make myself in that model, but then I thought even further and I was like, well, wait a minute. What would I look like in every Pixar style? So then I started to research the different movies and the different styles, and there's 15 different styles. Some movies have sequels and this and that, but there's 15 different styles, including Soul, which won't be out till later this year. So over the next 2 months, I studied the different styles, researched different fish, toys, cars, this and that, and I came up with 15 models of myself in each of the different Pixar styles. It was a lot of fun, a labor of love, and so, without further ado, here are the 15 renderings of myself in each Pixar style with a little explanation. Enjoy! For the Toy Story style, I made myself a toy, and I made myself a rubber bendy figure. With how many toys there are in the world, the idea for this toy came right to mind for the Toy Story style. When I was like 7 or 8 years old, I got a rubber bendy rabbit for Easter. And it was the first toy that I remember looking over, like almost studying its every detail. And it's always stuck with me ever since. So when I made my model, I tried to capture the rubbery look for the surface, but also the smallest detail. On the back of the rabbit, on its back, arms, and legs were 2 small holes. I don't know their purpose for manufacturing the toy, but I remember those details, so I wanted to include those onto my model as well. And then I exaggerated my arm length and leg length in the toy because in real life I have lanky arms and legs, so I wanted to incorporate that. And the hat that I'm wearing as a toy is a hat that I'm often seen wearing in real life. And so this was myself as a toy, done in the Toy Story style. So for Bug's Life, I made myself a bug. And I made myself a crane fly. And the reason I chose a crane fly was more so for aesthetic reasons. In keeping with the lanky look across all these models, the crane flies have got the longest limbs I could find. And crane flies can fly, which I wish I could fly. But when I picked the crane fly, I didn't fully realize that their faces were so unique. But I decided to keep all those unique features anyway. And then for the hat, which is another thing I'm trying to keep across all these styles, I thought about this one and it came up with a really cool idea. The hat is a candy wrapper, because it had to be small enough to fit on a bug. And so a candy wrapper is pretty small. And the candy wrapper I chose is like the plastic wrapper from a hard candy. And I think it turned out perfect. I love how this looks. And so here's myself as a crane fly done in a Bug's Life style. So for Monsters Inc., I made myself a monster. And for the look of my monster, I knew it would be furless due to the system limitations I was working with. And again, I wanted to keep the look lanky. As to the color, I asked my parents what color they thought I would be without any context to this project or Monsters Inc. or anything like that. And one said purple and one said blue. So after I played around with different kind of looks of purples and blues and patterns and this and that, this is what I ended up with, and I think it looks good. And then instead of regular hands or like tentacles, I went with claws because claws are cool. And then for the hair, I decided to make it a fin kind of look as some of the monsters have in the movies. Now for the hat, since every monster has a kid, I gave this monster, which is myself, a little backstory too. The hat that you see me wearing in each of these different styles is a real hat that I made back in 2007. I learned how to knit, made it myself, and I modeled it after Double D from Ed, Edd n Eddy. So the fact that this monster has got Double D's hat, his kid was Double D from Ed, Edd n Eddy. And I just love how I was able to like tie it all together like that. But yeah, so Here is myself as a monster in Monsters Inc. style. For the Finding Nemo or Finding Dory style, I made myself a fish, and more specifically, a flying fish. There's plenty of fish in the sea, and I chose this one. Again, I've always wanted to fly, so the fact that there's a fish called a flying fish, it worked out perfectly. And for the hat with this one, I decided to go with a seashell with some seaweed sticking out of it. Since we're in the ocean, it seemed like a perfect fit. And it was really fun to think of how to work the hat into all these different styles, and I think a seashell was just right for this one. There's not much more to say about this style, but here is myself as a flying fish in the Finding Nemo, Finding Dory style. So for The Incredibles, I made myself a superhero. And I actually made this model back when Incredibles 2 came out, so technically this is the first model I made for this project, even though it was like last year. In addition to wanting to fly, I love the cold, so for my superhero, I decided to combine those two things and came up with Arctic Wind, a super with the power of being impervious to the cold and the ability to grow ice wings that allow him to fly. Yeah! And so for this costume, I kind of went with just some cool colors, a simple costume, but I really like how it looks. And then for the logo, since his name is Arctic Wind, I took the A from Arctic and made it into like an icy mountain, and then the W just kind of intertwined in the A. And I think this is my only model without the hat, because should my character have this hat, he would probably be recognized right away as who this is. So no hat for him. But I love superheroes, so coming up with this concept of powers and the look was a lot of fun for me. So here is myself as Arctic Wind, a superhero, done in the Incredibles style. For cars, I made myself a car. And I was trying to go with a Ford Taurus. This was probably the most difficult model for me to make. I'm not much of a car guy. So I started out with the Ford Taurus because my zodiac sign is a Taurus. And I tried to make the front look like the Ford Taurus and the profile as well, but as I kept making it, it seemed to kind of just turn into a generic looking car. But I did add a cool license plate that reads animated. I love that little detail. And for the hat, I thought about this for a little while, and I decided on making it one of those kind of storage turtle shells that you put on top of cars if you're going for like a trip or something, and I think it worked out just right. So the hat is one of those storage shells on top of cars. And yeah, so this is myself as a car in the Cars style. For Ratatouille, I made myself a chef, which I actually am in real life. I went to culinary school for pastry, so this one was a lot of fun to make. And for this look, I studied all the human characters in the movie and noticed one thing they all had in common. Their noses are more pronounced and larger. So when I made this model, I just kind of made the nose bigger to kind of fit this style. And then for the chef whites, I just kind of copied what they had in the movie, nothing too special there. And since you're supposed to have your hair back when you're working in the kitchen, having a hat here just made sense. So here is myself as a chef in the Ratatouille style. For Wall-E, I made myself a human. And this one was fun to do because of the size difference. Since humans from space in the future are always at rest, they have become larger due to lack of exercise. So I made a larger version of myself in my by and large onesie, and I chose the blue model as opposed to the red because I'm wearing a blue shirt for all these models throughout this project. And I tried to include all the little details I could, so he's got like tiny fingernails, and I even tried to get the zipper pull to match just right. But this was another fun one to make, and always makes me smile. So here is myself as a human in the Wall-E style. So as I was planning out my looks for each of the different styles, I saw that a few of them were just plain humans with slight differences, and I wanted to mix it up here and there. So for Up, I made myself old. And as I was studying the character style in Up, I noticed that Pixar was able to show a lot without adding a lot. So like all the characters look great, but they aren't super detailed. A little example is that some of them don't have nostrils. So when I made myself in the up style, I tried keeping that minimalist yet noticeable look in mind, and no nostrils. And so I added a few pounds around my waist, and for the hat, I actually made it a few shades lighter in color, and I made it sit flatter on my head to kind of show that the hat had aged as well as myself. And so here is myself old, done in the up style. For Brave, I made myself a human. With this style being historically accurate about a time I'm not too familiar with, I relied heavily on the look of the characters in the movie, mainly the wardrobe and such. I know I'd need a kilt, and I know the plaid design of each kilt is specific to different clans, and so I started from there. Then I copied some of the details of the characters for myself, like their boots, the pouch on the side, and the clip on the shoulder. And then as for my hat, I looked up different helmets from the time period and tweaked one of the helmets to kind of have the colors match my hat more so. And that is myself in the Brave style. For Inside Out, I had a few options I could go with. I could make myself a human, or I could make my emotions. In the end, I just decided to go with one emotion. I believe most people see me as a happy person, and so I made my joy. And to make my joy, I kind of looked at all the joys that Pixar offered in the movie as well as the short. And so using Riley and her parents to her boyfriend, and even the dog, I looked at those joys. And for the most part, they're just the same base model except for the dog. And then they have different hair and clothing to match the person they are the joy of. So for me, I have the base model of Joy with the hair and the hat and then the clothes, but no shoes. And then from there, I went on to the actual look of the body, because all the emotions look like they're made up of little sprites that are, formed together to make these different humanoid type forms. And so it was tricky to figure that out, but what I went with is I gave myself like a roughness kind of texture, but it was kind of dark looking, so then I changed the ambience and the fall off to look lighter, and then I added a glow because Joy has a slight glow to her. So after I put all this together, this is what I came up with for myself, or rather my Joy, done in the Inside Out style. For the Good Dinosaur, I made myself a dinosaur, and I made myself a pterodactyl. Now, the pterodactyls in the movie were ravagers and just kind of jerks overall. That's not the reason I chose a pterodactyl. I chose them more for aesthetic reasons. In keeping with the continuity of my other models, the pterodactyls are kind of lanky in their arms, and they can fly, which keeps up with my lanky appearance as well as my desire to fly. And then in the movie, the pterodactyls have kind of protrusions on top of their head, and I saw that as a perfect way to incorporate my hat into the model. And so using those reasons, I chose the pterodactyl. And that was the easy part. Where it got tricky was making it look like the pterodactyls from the movie. Because in the movie, they've got lots of different kind of skin textures and colors going on, and I tried to replicate that as best I could. I must have spent over a dozen hours just playing with different looks and colors and textures and this and that, and I'm pleased with where I got it. It's not like 100% accurate, but I am very pleased with how it turned out. And so this is myself as a pterodactyl, done in the Good Dinosaur style. For Coco, I made myself a skeleton. And I love the way they made skeletons in this movie, so I was excited to make myself as a skeleton for this project. And it was pretty straightforward. The skeletons in the movie share attributes with how the person looked when they were living, so this kind of transferred recognizable traits onto a skeleton. And I did the same thing for myself. So I have my skeleton, then I added my hair and my hat and my clothing, and that was it for the general look of the skeleton. And then for the decorations on my skull, I did a couple hearts on the cheek because I like hearts, and I also just a simple dot for the eye. And that's pretty much it. For as simple as this one was to put together, I really love how it turned out. It's so cool to see myself become a skeleton from Coco. And with that being said, this is myself as a skeleton done in the Coco style. Onward, the one that started it all. After watching the movie a couple of times, I decided to make myself an elf. I felt I had the most similarities to them in the movie. Even though there are pixies who fly, they were a bit aggressive, which I don't see myself as. But I love how this one turned out. I pretty much just changed the proportion of my nose and my ears, and I changed some colors. And with as simple as those changes were, I think it turned out really awesome. I love this one. And that is myself in the Onward style. For Soul, I made myself a soul. And with this movie being delayed due to the COVID and only seeing a couple trailers about it, here's how I think I would look in the style of Soul. So the souls have like a fading transparency, translucency to them. They're squat in stature with a resemblance to their human form when they were living, and they retain their hair and their hats. So I'm not sure if the hat was on the person when their soul departs, or if it's an article of clothing that gets associated with them when they are alive, but either way, I got to keep my hat and my hair. And I really like the way they did the hair in this movie. It's just like a solid shape with a pretty blue color. And then the hats are really cool too. It's a very pale yellow with white detail lines, and just looks really sharp. And then another detail that I tried to incorporate in my model is the souls look like they have a blue light on one side and like a yellow light on the other side. So I tried to incorporate that into my model too. I'm excited for the movie to come out. I'm loving the way it's looking so far, but based only on those couple of trailers, here is myself in the style of Soul. So there you guys go, my personal Pixar project, making myself in all 15 styles of the Pixar animated feature films. It took a while to put all this together, but it really was a labor of love. I loved rewatching the movies, and I got to study each style and see what made each one unique, and then build myself in that style. It was so cool, it kind of made me feel like I was becoming part of these movies for real. It's hard to say if I had a favorite, but I did enjoy the ones that made me think outside of being a regular human, more so. But if you had a favorite, please let me know in the comments down below. Thank you guys for watching, hope you enjoyed this, and until next time, I'll see you guys later. Bye everybody, bye!